Hello everyone. The theme for this week is putting your leadership development plan into action. And in Module 8, we explored several strategies for modeling leadership and discussed actions that we would take in developing leaders of the future. One of our resources, the Little Book of Leadership Development, presented 50 different ways to develop leadership capacity in others, many of which are closely related or even inspired by the exemplary practices mentioned in the Leadership Challenge. I found most of them were small, easy to implement tips that can make a big difference no matter what organization one is a part of. A few of them I found very intriguing, such as one called the Pygmalion effect, which is the principle that if people are led to expect to do well, they tend to do well. A different way to say this is to expect the best in people, and they will do their best to rise to it. Another strategy that I appreciated was one called helping diagnose the challenge, technical or adaptive. This, of course, was a nod to the idea of adaptive leadership, championed by longtime leadership researcher Ron Heifetz. Adaptive leadership has long been a favorite of mine because it forces leaders not just to respond to challenges beyond what is on the surface. These surface or simple responses are what is known as technical solutions, whereas adaptive solutions require a new way of thinking about the problem. Adaptive leadership requires thinking deeply about things and seeing the world in new ways. This book has been a favorite of mine for some time, and I hope you have gained some appreciation for its simplicity and practicality. We also reflected upon the short document titled Develop Others, which served as a template for self-reflection for us as leaders. I like to think of this document as a leadership mirror, if you will, with each principle an honest question about our competencies and dispositions of leadership. Both of these resources, in many ways, are common sense practices, and all of us at some point or another can say, of course that makes sense. But the most poignant principle this week has been the notion that despite all this good research and the practical suggestions, common sense does not mean common practice. It is therefore the leader's job to bridge those two things together. Next week, we'll delve into some of the barriers in implementing an action plan. And more broadly, how can we as leaders navigate those things, ideas, and many times people that have a divergent view of things? One way to look at the next module is that it is an extension of this current module. In other words, if this week we talked about our plans, the next week we'll talk about how those plans are implemented. Simply put, we just talked about the conceptual, the ideal. But we know that at some point it has to be put into action, or what I would call the real. Real includes taking into account the different things to consider as we get there.